Right, hi guys, Luton here. So today I want to talk about a new and upcoming game. It is another World War II title, and before you tune out immediately, I think this one has some genuine potential. Now for starters, I was contacted by the developers of this game about a month ago, and I had a very long conversation with the developers about where this game is headed and what it's looking to do. Now I've had many of these conversations in the past with different devs around sort of, I would say, more independent first-person games, and that usually helps you get a heads up about what that game is going to be about. Now, I've had recently, obviously, some disappointments when it comes to games that I previously thought were going to be something that they ended up not being. I think that's actually not the case with this game, but time will obviously tell. But right now, what I can tell you about this game is what they have on their website, and I'm hoping to get an interview with the devs pretty soon so I can get them on the record and you can actually hear word for word from them where they are looking to make this game. So why do I think this game is going to be something different and something really good? Okay, so let's just read what they've got on their website. So Battle on a New Scale. It's going to be a Platoon-based, realistic multiplayer first-person shooter for PC set during Second World War. Huge battles. Now we've heard this many times before. Are they going to achieve it? We'll have to find out more, but right now they're saying 100 players per game. That's 50 per team. That's really big. Coordinate, they're going to have to win through teamwork, tactics, communication. Obviously, this is something we want. A new metagame, capture sectors and resources to beat your enemy into submission. I'll talk about that more soon. Combined arms, over 20 different player-controlled vehicles and deployed weapons. An epic theatre of war, battle across a 1-to-1 scale 4-kilometer squared map. More than the Twitch, it's going to be about supply, capture, and building systems. These are good things. Experience history, historically accurate arsenal with realistic weapon behaviour, also good, and it's developed for Unreal 4. Now they say it's developed by a small independent team. Hell Let Loose places heavy emphasis on teamwork and communication as players work together as limited roles in platoons beneath the leadership of officers and the force commander. Using historically accurate weapons, logistics, armor and tactics, Hell Let Loose is a game that demands teamwork and communication not only to win, but to survive. Featuring sweeping maps, the battlefield is divided up into large cap sectors, allowing for emergent and constantly unique gameplay that pits two forces of 50 players in a fight to the death across fields, bridges, forests and towns. The first theatre of war is the sleepy Norman town of Saint-Marie-du-Mont on D-Day in 1944 in northern France during Operation Overlord. It features a stunning and detailed 1-to-1 scale battlefield recreated from archival reference material and satellite photography. Players will organise a muster behind the front lines before carefully pushing forward into the French countryside towards the town. They'll need to establish supply lines using logistic vehicles, enabling them to build garrisons and other spawn locations in the field. Armoured infantry must work together to smash through the front line and capture territory, pushing the enemy back and earning greater resources to sustain their fighting power. Engineers can lay minefields and barbed wire to create choke points. Sunken lanes become killing zones, while dense woodlands can mask the presence of devastating Pak-43, towed into position by a waiting unit of Wehrmacht infantry. Allied infantry can call in strafing runs as hedgerows light up with the fire of Panther tank and the scream of the Hitler's buzzsaw, the MG42. The battlefield is laid out ready to be mastered by soldiers with the skill and strategic ability to wipe the enemy from the field. A closed pre-alpha of Hell Let Loose is going to be expected in October 2017, and then yes, a Kickstarter campaign launched prior to a Greenlight campaign. We plan to release Hell Let Loose on Steam in early 2018. So it's looking really, really good, and I'm very excited for where this is heading towards. Now, the only thing to always bear in mind is that, you know, we have heard this so many times with games before where they promise everything you want, everything you hear, and then when it actually gets to the stage, it doesn't pan out. Now, as I say, from the conversations that I have had with the developers already, I feel like that's not going to be the case, but we'll put a pin and we will see where this pans out. As I say, I hope to have further conversations and obviously know more nearer the time, but let's get on with some more information. So talking about the vehicles, it says deliver supplies to the front in an Opel Blitz supply truck, roll across the fields in a Sherman Firefly, flee a fearsome Panther tank in a Jeep, or bombard the enemy position in a Priest. We plan to introduce up to 30 vehicles into the game to serve a wide variety of functions. Our first priority will be the inclusion of supply and transport vehicles before we widen the scope to the most prolific vehicles, the Panzer IV, Sherman, and then introducing interesting variants such as the ones I'm not going to be able to pronounce: Sherman Calliope, Puma, SDKFZ, 234 and Tiger 2. Vehicle categories are going to be supply, transport, light armour, medium armour, heavy armour, mobile artillery, tank destroyer, assault gun, half-track scout and repair. Some more information about the map now. It says our first epic theatre of war captures the beauty and foreboding of the Norman countryside in the early weeks of Operation Overlord 1944. Dense woodland hedgerows and canals frame rolling stretches of open countryside, while small villages and towns provide the perfect choke point to command crossroads and high ground. It takes approximately 15 minutes to cross on foot, and our unique capture territory system demands a new strategy and offers a totally different experience every time. Instead of pushing in a linear tug of war, you'll be forced to fight across a realistically wide battlefield and an ever-developing front line. Will you roll Arma into Breakourt Manor from the west in order to quickly secure the northern approach, or will you attempt to choke the enemy in the stretches of open farmland between the eastern crossroads and the orchard that encircle St. Marie de Mont? Or will you become bogged down in house-to-house fighting as you battle tooth and nail to take the manor at Horshmail? I don't do French. Okay, let's carry on. 3 levels of warfare. Engage in multi-dimensional warfare like never before. Strategic. Play as the command and decide on the grand strategy as you deploy your forces and adapt to the ever-changing situation on the ground. Communicating via radio, up to you to summon reinforcements, supplies and powerful aerial and naval strikes while accurately assessing the situation on the front line. Operational. Establish supply lines of tracks, transport vehicles and armoured recovery vehicles. Supplies will allow your forces to construct minefields, defences and garrisons. Failure to supply the front line will result in a devastating collapse. Tactical. Play as an officer and establish observation posts and garrisons before working to determine the best course of attack or defence for your unit. Mark targets with your binoculars to notify the commander and work together to flank, reinforce, supply and obliterate the enemy. Okay, so now let's talk a bit more about that game mode, that warfare game mode with the 50 players per side. So what this is going to be, instead of capturing a small flag like ABC, the entire map is going to be divided into capture sectors. Imagine like a grid, basically. Forces each team of 50 players to make continual tactical decisions as to where they should attack and defend. When a sector is captured, it will generate one of 3 resources for your team, creating a complex metagame that will influence your push to victory. Will the cost of spending fuel on a Tiger tank inflict significant enough damage to the enemy to wrest control of the western flank? Will the munitions spent on a Typhoon strafing run clear the distant hedgerows and open a path to the town of Carentan? Or can the bridgehead at Feuilly, French, be maintained without sustaining devastating losses to your manpower? Now, I'm going to talk about this more in upcoming videos, but the thing that immediately hits me is, again, it's all the stuff which sounds good, but is this kind of gameplay possible in 2017? With the kind of players you have in 2017, is this kind of coordinated gameplay possible? And the question is, if it's impossible to coordinate or people are just playing their own single player game, is the actual mechanics of the game designed to lead people towards the right kind of actions, or is it more people need to be making their own tactical decisions? These are the kind of things which are going to critically affect how this game plays out. I'm going to attempt to find out more about that as we go forward. Okay, let's talk weapons. So, realistic weapons. The 16+ historically accurate rifles, submachine guns, light machine guns, heavy machine guns, pistols and assault rifles are all accessible in realistic limitation. That's something I want to find out more about. That's interesting. When they say are accessible in realistic limitation, I take that to meaning that you're not going to be able to have an entire team of light machine guns, an entire team of snipers. It's going to be kind of limited, basically, and I think that's a really good thing if that's the case. With no crosshair. Also really good. A focus on realistic weapon behaviour, including jamming. Okay, Level's not going to like that one. Overheating barrels and a brutal suppression system. Hell Let Loose gets as close to the historical truth of the conflict as possible without becoming tedious or chore-laden. I think there's going to be some interesting things in there people are going to want to pick apart. Again, I'm going to try and find out more information about that. No crosshair good. Focus on realistic weapon behaviour. Jamming, overheating and a suppression system. I think some people there are going to be like, oh god, but you know, it could be a good thing. I'm going to be interested to find out more about that. Grenades, mines, mortars, heavy ordnance, anti-tank and tank rounds dismember, while Flammenwerfers light up the morning sky. Each one of the 14 playable roles will be equipped with a unique array of equipment inspired by their historical counterparts. So again, that suggests faction-specific weapons as well. Also a good thing. How about the team making the game? They're a team of World War II enthusiasts making a game that we want to play. We're bound by a passion to create a title that reflects the epic scale, the organisational complexity and the brutal realism of World War II, with a key focus on creating immersive and fun gameplay. Based in the US, Russia, Australia, the Hell Let Loose team has been working together since April 2015. And then we've got a couple of screenshots here taken in-game. This is some German soldiers moving up to what looks like a farm, and you can see an MP44 here. From what I understand, these are in-game, so this is not like rendered out. This is what it's going to look like in-game. And then as you can see here, this is an AT gun surrounded by some spent shells. This is deployable within the game, and it's for the US as an AT solution. So they've already got an FAQ on the website, gives us a bit more information. So let's start off with, when is Hell Let Loose set? Hell Let Loose is set throughout the duration of World War II. The first theatre of war will be based in Normandy, northern France. It includes several villages and the town of Saint-Marie-de-Mont. The map is based on archival reference photography, satellite photography and height imagery. We're proud to present a 1:1 scale 4 km² battlefield. We plan to create many more theatres on full release, allowing players to fight in iconic conflicts such as the Battle of the Bulge, Battle of Stalingrad and the Battle of Guadalcanal. We're also keen to include the community in our decision-making process when it comes to the creation of additional theatres. All of that is really exciting. They're taking a really wide snapshot. They're not staying just in France. They're going to go to Russia, they're going to Guadalcanal, they're going all over the place. So, and then, again, additional theatres. Really exciting. Which forces can I play as? So initially the first theatre is going to be set in Normandy. It's going to pit the faded might of the Germans against the relatively green forces of the US Army. We plan to make more factions available as we create different theatres. Our roadmap includes the addition of British forces, Austere Wehrmacht forces, Russian forces, Imperial Japanese forces. Again, really ambitious scope there. Okay, now we come back to that ever dangerous word, realistic. How realistic will it be? We're aiming to make a game that mixes the high intensity carnage, weapon mechanics and brutality of Red Orchestra 2 with the operational supply and construction mechanics of Project Reality beneath the meta strategy of a game similar to Company of Heroes. Holy shit, they're like really going for it with this one. We prefer intense, terrifying and intelligent instead of long, tedious and boring. Sounds good? Can they pull it off? We will see. Will there be destructible elements? Big question. At present, bridges, walls and fences are at the top of the destruction priority list. Bridges are destructible. Fuck you, Battlefield. As this will have a significant effect on gameplay strategy and tactics. Players will be able to shape the flow of traffic across the map by making areas very difficult for armor and vehicles to traverse safely. That's so important. That's so important. They said they've tested numerous forms of more complex destruction for both foliage and buildings and decided the load on the network would compromise the total player count of the game. It is more important to us to field 100 players on a large map than 5 players on a destructible battlefield. It's fair enough. I mean, honestly, I've said this many times before, I think Battlefield as a game actually spoils us for FPS now, because when you play Battlefield, you do see such destruction, and then you just think, except bridges, and then you think to yourself like, oh my god, this is where we should be at. And then all other games are obviously going to really struggle. That's one thing that DICE really just made it their own, was the destruction, and that was always the case coming through the game as it developed through Bad Company and beyond. And it does often feel frustrating now when you're in games which don't have destruction, but when you actually come down to what is required and what you need to understand to actually make that happen, it's obviously so complex, and trying to do that with a small team of guys, you're never going to be able to achieve that. So I like their scope and I like their rationale, but it's always frustrating. But I think people just need to be realistic and understand, hey look, unless you're a big studio, or unless it's been like a core focus from your team for like years and years like it was for DICE, it's just not going to be something which is attainable. However, I like the fact that they have gone for the options of like bridges, walls and fences. It's going to give you enough, I feel, that's going to actually make it work. Okay, will there be gore? Kind of a shocking question. Actually, this is one which I brought up again, you remember, around the release of Battlefield. Might have to discuss this again in the future. So yes, we already have appropriate decals, death animations and blood spray, but we'll be looking to drive the horror home with dismemberment. Bloody hell. How will wounding work? The medic role will play a vital part in dragging, carrying and reviving wounded comrades. Wow, that's some real Arma stuff in there. We've built a 3-tiered system of wounding that reflects the reality of the conflict without bogging the player down with tedious and often contrived mechanics. Good to hear. If you take a shot to the extremities, you can be able to deal with it yourself. Getting hit in a vital area will require some professional attention. Getting hit by a mortar round or throwing yourself onto a grenade will turn you into Humpty Dumpty. How will the vehicles work? Vehicles in the game will be equipped with historically accurate gun sights and levels of magnification. This is also important. They will have finite ammunition and reflect the types of ammunition fitted during the period. Should a vehicle take damage or run out of ammunition, it can return to base to be repaired and rearmed. That is really amazing. We also plan to introduce armoured recovery vehicles for infield rearming and retrieval for other knocked out vehicles. We're currently developing an armor rating system in order to realistically model the status quo of the battlefield at the time. A Tiger tank will be able to destroy a Sherman at a 1 kilometer range, while the Shermans will have to coordinate and work together in order to close distance and hit a Tiger tank at close range from the flank or behind. To reflect the reality of the war, Shermans will be far more numerous and less costly to field. Additionally, a single bazooka round will rarely outright destroy most vehicles. Players will have to be wise in how to use them in both positioning and proximity. All of that sounds really interesting. It's such a detailed level of control and engagement. It's going to be very interesting to see how those, and also the kind of faction specificness, it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out and hopefully not create an unfair disparity. We plan to enable several different effects upon being hit by a round, all depending on the location of the strike and the nature of the projectile. So if you're crippled, it's going to give you half movement speed. If you're immobilized, you can't move. If you get a firepower kill, that's the main gun destroyed. A mission kill, crew injured or killed by penetrating a round, but the vehicle will survive. And a catastrophic kill, ammunition explodes and the entire crew are immolated. Here's another thing that's going to be very interesting. Arma will only be able to be driven by a specified role. We also have simplified the crewing system to require 2 players to operate a vehicle with optional passengers and commander positions. The reason we've done this is due to our total player count. In reality, 5 men were required to crew a Sherman tank. Therefore, if we want to field 3 to 5 Shermans, the US forces would be left with 25 men at most to fill the infantry, supply, artillery commander and reconnaissance positions across a 2-kilometer front line. By simplifying to a 2-man crew, forces are able to deploy a proportionally accurate variety of vehicles. You know, that's a really important thing to be aware of, and it goes back to something I've talked about before, which is the behemoths in Battlefield. The fact that the behemoth in Battlefield takes so many players off the ground, it means that whilst it can give you an advantage, it takes so many people out from actually being able to do anything on the ground. And that's why I say, I think the behemoths in Battlefield are just a gimmick. They don't actually do anything constructive, and they can actually have a negative impact on the players on the ground. Now obviously tanks are on the ground, but when you have a tank going off and doing something, can you imagine if you had 5 guys in a tank out of 50 players? You know, unless that tank crew are actually doing something constructive, that's a huge waste of infantry. How big is a platoon? Players are organised into groups of 6, which are respectively called a platoon or a group. We realise that real platoons consist of many more men, however, these are representational formations. If we were to make real-sized platoons, we would only be able to field a single full platoon. To give the sense of more men per unit, each platoon has the ability to reinforce from their own player-deployed spawn positions. Will we be able to build? And I guess it's something more akin to like squad. So yes, we're keen for players to be able to construct defences in order to capitalise on natural choke points and fields of fire. The engineer role will be able to erect barbed wire, tank traps, machine gun nests and other emplacements. He'll also be able to lay anti-tank and personal minefields, as well as detect and mark enemy minefields. Obviously, an engineer cannot carry a battlefield's worth of defences on his back. To construct them, he'll have to have supplies delivered to the front line. It will be crucial to have a steady and protected supply line should you wish to maintain a strong defensive line. Now again, it's interesting because, you know, depending on how people are going to want to play the game, you can very much imagine you get like 4 or 5 friends together and say, okay, we're going to work on just doing that supply line stuff. Now, is that going to actually translate in-game? I don't know. But the thing is whether or not people are going to understand this. There's a lot of, you know, complexity here in understanding what you need to do. For many people that have played FPS and understand these kind of games, play more serious games for a long time, it's going to be challenging to, I think, you know, get other people who don't know how to do that to actually engage with that. But it does open you up to a lot of tutorials and a lot of, you know, conversations about that, so it'll be interesting to see how you can make that happen. Next up, they had a bit of an interesting one I didn't expect to see. Will you censor Nazi imagery? Yes. It is our goal to make a historically accurate game. As such, we'll strive to capture the camo schemes, equipment, uniforms and weapons of each of the Wehrmacht and SS formations. However, we'll be taking care to exclude all Nazi imagery that is illegal in Europe. How much will Hell Let Loose cost? We're keen to support this game for an extended period of 3 to 5 years minimum. It's really good to hear that out the gate, you know. If they're saying that, you know, they're not going to just like turn this game out, be done with it and done. You know, they're looking to support this game over time. 3 to 5 years, that's a really, really good time frame. They want to consistently introduce more and more mechanics, a wide array of vehicles. We want to create a sandbox that facilitates the full spectrum of World War II conflict. That includes additional forces and additional game types. To do so, at present we plan to sell the game for a single one-off purchase that includes all additional features and content in order to sustain our revenue for long-term support of the game. We'll also be creating one-time purchase expansions to include additional campaign stuff. So what's my overall conclusion on Hell Let Loose? I really like the direction this is going in. I think it's a very positive direction. I think that it's going to be giving us what we actually wanted. I think some of the recent more indie titles which have come out have been focused very much on the kind of close quarter aspect and not on improving the actual scope, the actual atmosphere and the actual feel of a World War II game. Where Hell Let Loose are going down is much more this kind of, well, basically Company of Heroes but first person. That's really exciting. The question is, can they make that work in terms of getting people to actually play the objective, work as a team, coordinate, run things like supply lines and logistics? A lot of people now want to just literally get in game and shoot what's in front of them. They don't want to do that overall coordination. And how are you going to coordinate if it's based on a public thing? Are we going to have server browsers? Are we going to be able to join as big groups of players easily? Is that kind of infrastructure going to work? These are the things which we need to find out. I'm going to try and do some more information gathering on this, guys. If you want to follow me, I'm going to keep you up to date with how that loose, so please subscribe. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, guys. This is Luton. I'll see you next time.